Hall for July 6th, 2025. Obviously, these are intense political days we're living through, and we have a pretty great show today, town hall today, in that we have the mayor of Tucson, Arizona, Regina Romero, will be joining us very shortly to talk about the close race in Arizona.
Mike Fox, did Alan just freeze?
It looks as though he may have. So I will take what Alan was speaking of, and surely he'll be coming here soon. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here today. Please do, as you are coming in, type your name into the chat, where you're calling from. We have a very special town hall today. As Alan was saying, the mayor of Tucson, Arizona, will be joining us to lay out the campaign for Adelita Grijalva, running in the special election in the 7th district in Arizona. Big doings, big doings. The special election is just next Tuesday. And then likewise, we'll have Professor Harvey J. Joining us, discussing how it is we as progressives take the narrative back here. And absolutely brilliant man who I'm sure will have incredible insights that we will all learn from here. And my apologies, we have some folks messaging me. And so that being said, just a reminder for all of our folks who are here each and every week, Sundays at 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific. We hold this call to join together as a community, show solidarity with each other, learn some stuff, and likewise get energized for the work that is ahead of us. So our to-do number one with this call is always revel in the fact that you're surrounded by people who get it, share positive energy in the chat. Our chat is open for now. Once the featured guests are with us, we will turn the chat off just for that period so that we all stay focused on what's going on, what our speakers are speaking about, et cetera, et cetera. We want to show them that respect and likewise get as much productivity out of this call as we possibly can. And that's one of
Mike,
the ways
I'm
we do it.
sorry to interrupt. Alan has joined us again, and Hartzell has joined us as well.
Excellent, Jim. Thank you so much. Let me get to Alan and co-host him. If you would not let anyone else in for a second, so this thing stops jumping around.
I will turn off the chat for now as well.
All right. There's Alan Minsky. See, don't let anybody else in. Okay.
I'm here. You can hear me, but you can't see me.
Yep.
Yeah. And there we go. Now you can probably see me. I'm on my handheld, and I will join from my computer. Having trouble with my connection with my Spectrum monopoly here in Highland Park, California. I apologize for having dropped everybody. As I was saying, we have a very special town hall. We're going to be joined momentarily by the mayor of Tucson, Arizona, who's the chair of the Adelita Grijalva for Congress campaign. PDA has endorsed Adelita Grijalva, who is a great progressive. She's in a race that we need to put all of our resources into, and we're going to be hearing from Mayor Romero from Tucson in just a few minutes. After that, we're going to hear from Professor Harvey J. Kaye, who's going to reflect on the importance of American history for progressives. And the question, this very live question, certainly has been something that's been prevalent on the left my entire life, the relationship of the left to embracing the American experiment, or if you like, the American left, and patriotism. And the problems that exist because of the perception that the right has, quote unquote, owned the flag pretty much my entire life. And we've seen, of course, not a lot of victories by the left electorally in the United States over those decades, and how much of a problem that represents and what progressives can do about that. So that's going to be a very important discussion. We'll be joined by Donna Smith and Hartzell Gray in that conversation as well, but a bit of a different structure because we are going to be joined momentarily by, again, Mayor Regina Romero will be joining us. And I'll just maybe provide a bio, if I can, to let everybody know that Mayor Romero became the first woman and first Latina mayor of Tucson, Arizona. And she was raised by immigrant farm workers in Somerton, Arizona. Regina was the first member of her family to vote and the first to graduate from college. Prior to being elected mayor, Regina Romero served as Ward 1 City Council member from 2007 to 2019. And then listen to this checklist of priorities and talk about a great PDA supported politician. Mayor Romero is committed to creating Tucson as a sustainable, thriving desert city of the future through her policy priorities that include creating a climate resilient Tucson, support for working families, including housing affordability, investing in our, sorry, it's hard for me to read this and not think a little bit that maybe Regina Romero was trailblazing for Zohran Mamdani. Investing in our infrastructure and parks, robust economic development, including supporting small businesses, equitable access and investment for all. She is the chair of the Latino Alliance of the U.S. Conference of Mayors and co-chair of Mayors Against Illegal Guns and inaugural member of the Mayors Alliance to End Childhood Hunger. Mayor Romero is a member of the Climate Mayors Network, a nationally recognized voice on climate action. And Mayor Romero will be joining us as she is the chair of the Adelita Grijalva for Congress campaign shortly. And Mike Fox, as I am on my handheld, can you let me know, has Mayor Romero joined us yet?
Not yet.
Paul Staples? Not yet. Okay, thank you. So we'll keep holding for that. Look, these are very intense times for PDA and for the United States in general. I did want to highlight one thing. I figured this week I really wasn't going to have time for the kind of top of the show editorial that I usually provide. But I don't think anybody should lose sight of just one of the many horrible components of the big, terrible bill that Donald Trump and the Republicans pushed through Congress this past week. And one component that I do think is unique in my lifetime and uniquely, truly, truly horrible is the funding for ICE. It exceeds, there are a number of domestic, federal, law enforcement agencies and drug intervention agencies that now ICE will have a larger budget than all of them combined, like the FBI, the weapons agency, I'm forgetting its name right now, the federal prisons, a whole set of them, you add them up and ICE is going to have a larger budget. Part of that budget is going to go towards building the wall, but basically Trump is setting up a Praetorian Guard paramilitary domestic agency. And this is harrowing. I don't believe we've ever seen anything like this in American history. And it's all the more reason why we have to be highly cognizant on the progressive left of developments like this, and also be able to put forward with incredible clarity and soundness the unraveling of this unprecedented the domestic militia force that is being put in place through ICE. And of course,
sorry, but this is Donna. I do see the mayor on here. I see her name.
Thank you so much. And that is the intervention I was looking for. And Donna, thank you as always. And Donna will be joining us with her weekly thoughts in response to Professor Kaye. We will have our weekly PDA announcements, though, after Professor Kaye makes his presentation. But for now, I am absolutely honored to introduce to everybody here Mayor Regina Romero. And Mayor Romero, I already read your bio to the audience. And we are just absolutely pleased to have you join us in your capacity both as mayor and as a chair of the Adelita Grijalva for Congress campaign. Welcome, Mayor Romero.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it and hate interrupting you in the middle of your sentence, especially because with what you were saying is very, very important for us to talk about. But I appreciate the invitation. I know that before I had a little bit of an emergency. I couldn't join you. And now it's, I have family at home. So I just apologize if you hear any laughter or loud noises behind me. Family is here with me at my house. So just wanted to give you a little bit of a warning. Besides that, I just wanted to talk to you all about the special Congressional District 7 race that's in full swing right now. People either have their ballots with them at home or already sent it in. But it's very important to note that tomorrow, Monday is the last day that people can mail their ballots in. And we need to make sure that people mail it in and they vote for the clear choice of the progressive candidate in this race is Adelita Grijalva. I am the co-chair of her campaign, but it's just not a political relationship, right? I've known Adelita for the last 30 years. I have seen her grow up in the Grijalva family, which means that they were all committed and they are all committed to investing their time and effort into their community. And so when people call her the legacy candidate, that is right. She has a long legacy that she has been part of public service. And to be honest with you, it enrages me that her experience and her commitment to her community and the time and effort that her and her family have put into creating policy that will help working families is being used against her. You know, she herself says, I don't come from the Rockefellers. I come from the Grijalvas. We live on 12th Avenue in Ohio. I went to high school to Pueblo. I went to the University of Arizona. And every single year, either they were campaigning for Congressman Grijalva, who occupied many, many elected positions and serving his community. But they were helping other people. And those other people are like me. You know, I came to Tucson when I was 17. I turned 18 here. I kind of woke up in terms of policies and public service when I was 18, 19 years old. And I started volunteering at 20 for political campaigns. And some of the first people that I met in this city were the Grijalvas. And for young Chicanita like me, working family, immigrant parents, we all worked in the fields of Arizona and California and Colorado, migrated to continue working. I didn't really feel as though I belonged, except for the Grijalvas and all of the network of friends that I made through volunteering my time. And in seeing them firsthand and how they have dedicated their lives to policy making as public servants, and what that means for me and for so many families in Tucson and Southern Arizona, it's a world of a difference. And so I see that public service as something good, right? That you create, you work hard for your community and never really give up. That's why the years of service are important. And so for me, what I have seen in Adelita and her time in office and her 20 years of volunteer work for TUSD, working for our babies, fighting for teachers, making sure that janitors and bus drivers actually got paid fairly. That's why she has the support of the teachers union, right? TEA, AEA. That's why she has the support of so many people like myself, other public servants like Mark Kelly and Gabby Giffords and Senator Gallego and Phoenix Mayor Kaye Gallego, and, you know, abundance of elected officials here and throughout Southern Arizona, because we believe that that she has served as well, and that she will fight to make sure that you know, we defend Medicare and Medicaid, that we defend Social Security, that we defend public education. What is happening right now is unlike any other time in America. Our democracy, not just our policies that that move us forward as a country, are being dismantled. And we need someone with the experience that Adelita has, to be able to jump in to Congress and fight for us. So, I just want to talk about Adelita's experience as a lifelong champion of progressive policies, of fighting for working families, of public education, and making sure that she, I had the great pleasure of working much more with her when she was on the Pima County Board of Supervisors. And as mayor, I would meet with Adelita every other week. We brought our city manager, our county administrator together, and we pushed for additional funding in affordable housing, additional funding. We pulled together our opioid settlement funds so that the money could go longer or farther in really addressing the root causes of our opioid and fentanyl crisis here in Pima County and in Tucson. And I know that Adelita will make sure that she fights the MAGA agenda that we are seeing, dismantling our public education. And basically, she knows that what is fueling Trump and the MAGA extremists is greed and racism. Let's just be honest. She knows that, and she will confront it. And so, I would be more than happy to continue on and on and on. I could go on in terms of the work that Adelita has done and fought for, and and that I believe, and we all see that, and we all see a coalition of support for her, right? UFCW and unions are endorsing her. Planned Parenthood, Bold Pack, League of Conservation Voters, Lucha, the Working Families Party, Machinists of Arizona Council, UFCW. I mean, you could go on and on and on, because it's not about her last name, but of the work that she has done to prove herself as the candidate that is right for Southern Arizona. And she will continue listening to our needs and fighting for our country and for working families. If you'd like, I would be more than happy to answer questions or just continue, talking about the issues that we all care for.
Well, why don't we do this? Right now, I want to ask the staff members behind the scenes who are into the chat if we could put the fundraising split that we have for PDA, and the next 9 days for PDA are 9 days about electing Adelita Grijalva nationally and in Southern Arizona and across the entire state. And of course, if you donate to that link, well, half the money will go directly to the Adelita Grijalva campaign, half the money will go to PDA, all of which will be spent by PDA in the next 9 days, as we will put the pedal to the metal for this campaign. And with that, I just maybe want to ask Dan O'Neill or Paul Stapleton Smith any kind of follow-up question. And a follow-up question, and my follow-up question is also just along the lines of motivating people to get out, to recognize the importance of this election. This is for us as PDA. First of all, of course, Rahul Grijalva was a part of PDA, and we were a part of his congressional career. The attachment between the organization and that congressional office was as strong or stronger than any that we had for anyone. And we see the continuation of the work and bringing it into the middle part now of the 21st century by Adelita Grijalva, and we are thrilled for that. And I just can't encourage everybody on the call to not only to donate on that link, but to sign up to volunteer, to make phone calls over the next 9 days. This is a super, super important election for us. It is not a guaranteed victory. I'm not going to editorialize against any other candidate, but this is the one qualified candidate who is a progressive in this race, in my opinion. And I don't think anyone even comes close to the other two candidates. And so it's very important for us to mobilize and to get a victory in this race. And Paul or Dan, if you want to say anything and just have a quick thought for the mayor, and then we'll go over to Harvey in a few minutes. But Paul or Dan?
Thank you, Alan. Dan O'Neill here, state coordinator for PDA in Arizona, and I just want to thank the mayor for being with us. Mayor, we saw you at the state committee meeting when you spoke last month. You were fantastic. All the work you're doing for Adelita is just amazing. My question for you is, we have over 400 people on this call. What can the 400 people do in the next few days to make a difference? What do you think those
Thank you so much,
immediate
Dan,
things?
for that question.
And
Such an
a lot of
important
the people are
question.
from around the country, so they
Okay.
can't knock on doors in Tucson, but they can do other things. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. Thank you so much. First, I forgot to say, by the way, that AOC and Theo Bernie have endorsed Adelita as the most progressive candidate. They know that Adelita will continue and build on the work of Congressman Grijalva. What you can do if you are not in Tucson, in Southern Arizona, you can hop on the phone. And that's one of the most effective ways. Besides knocking on doors, the next best thing to do is jumping on the phone and calling voters. We are calling especially those that are not returning their ballots because it is a special election. We're hopping on the phone and making sure that we're calling people, especially tomorrow, right? Tomorrow, Tuesday, is going to be more about take your ballot. You can't mail it any longer, but tomorrow is going to be a key date to jump on the phone for Adelita. And you could go to adelitaforcongress.com to take a look at what's happening in the campaign and to jump in on a phone bank. You can do it from anywhere in the country. And even if you spend 2 hours doing it, you're going to reach people that need to be called, that need to be reminded that this is a special election. Some people haven't realized. And if they don't have their ballot with them, just tell them to go to the county recorder's office or any of the voting centers that we have in Pima County. And at adelitaforcongress.com, you will find all of the necessary information to do that, to jump on a phone bank. You can contribute. And Adelita has received thousands, 98% of her donations are coming from you and me, working families. Her average donation is, I think she said like $28 or something like that. And so contributing to her campaign, don't feel as though you have to donate a lot of money. If you contribute $20, it will help to cross through the primary election finish line and then get herself ready for the general election. So please donate, do phone banking, and encourage your friends to do as well.
Well, thank you so much, Paul Stapleton Smith. A quick thought?
Only very quickly, this Madam Mayor, in my entire lifetime, I could not be more proud of the work that you do. And with Adelita in Southern Arizona, to be a Grijalvista is a mark and a badge of honor. And I'm so grateful, sister, you support, you hit our picket lines, you support our strikes. From Dolores Huerta to our biggest labor leaders, Susie Minato, who was just here. Some of you may know that. That said, I just couldn't be more delighted and so proud that you're our mayor and that you're in this fight with us. And God bless everybody on this call, because I know so many of you have been working this Adelita campaign. And that said, Madam Mayor, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you so much for always being there yourself, always showing up. I usually like to say that, I kind of finished growing up here in Tucson, and I couldn't be luckier than to have seeked a space in the Grijalva world, because he really taught me and so many others, including his family and Adelita, that serving should be for the people. Like we are public servants. We serve for the people. and fight every single day for working families. And I'll tell you, as an individual that has been elected, it's going to be 20 years that I've been serving both on the city council and as mayor in 2027. And what I have learned from serving is that it takes a long time to change systems in government. And you know, some zillennials or Generation Z, they want change like this. And what I usually, my advice for young people is like, get involved, you know, get in there, volunteer, and you will see change happen, but sometimes change takes so long. And we've got to be able to have a solid base of support to help those of us that are representing people as public servants to move forward. And right now I feel that people around this country are just saying no, you know, saying no to MAGA, saying no to Trump. And this is when we need the most support to make sure that we continue standing up for the values that we all hold dear. And to be able to bring us, right, you, the people of our community, you're the ones that help bring us along. It doesn't help to throw rotten tomatoes or rotten eggs at the people that are in your team. It helps having these discussions like these, where you all get to say, Mayor or Adelita or any public servant, this is what we need. And that we expect, I would say. And I think Adelita does the same thing. But being the daughter of immigrant farm workers and really connecting to who I am and where I've been really keeps me in a place where, and I know that it does to Adelita as well. She knows who she is, right? She knows that her grandfather was a bracero and worked really hard to put food at the table. And she understands how wonderful this country has treated us, but it has taken so many of you to stand for the rights of working families. And that's exactly what we need to continue doing so that we can fight for the now and for my kids that are in their teens and future generations that are coming behind us, that we can leave them an earth that we can live in, right? Climate change is destroying our planet. And like I said, the greed and racism behind the policy priorities of Trump and MAGA extremists are moving quickly to dismantle the Constitution and what we've always stood for in this country, which is justice and equality.
Well, Mayor Romero, thank you so much. And certainly from PDA National and PDA Arizona and PDA Southern Arizona, we look forward to working with you going forward. Exciting to make contact with you. And let's all get behind this campaign and do everything we can to elect Adelita Grijalva. Again, in the chat will be a link where people can donate to both the campaign and to PDA's efforts to work on behalf of Adelita Grijalva, which is just what we're about as an organization for the next 9 days. Absolutely our top priority. And also volunteer if you can with PDA to make phone calls on behalf of the campaign. And Mayor Romero, thank you so much. And let's have a big, let's celebrate a week from Tuesday with the victory for Adelita Grijalva. Thank you so much, Mayor Romero.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Now, let's take a moment before I introduce Professor Harvey J. Kaye to talk about American history and the progressive left and July 4th weekend and the right and its control or claims to be the patriotic force in the country versus what progressives have done to make this a great place for people went through struggle and opposing oppression and repression across the society to make it a more peaceful and prosperous society. And but let's right now take a moment for everybody to have an opportunity to either sign up to volunteer for PDA on behalf of Adelita Grijalva's campaign, or to donate so that we can support the campaign directly and also support PDA's efforts to elect Adelita on Tuesday. This is a winnable race. We really are confident that we're going to win this thing, but it's going to take all of us, making phone calls, doing our best to deliver a very important victory for the progressive left down in Arizona, the maintenance of the incredible work and the continuation of the incredible work that Rule Grijalva did, always in coordination with PDA. So please click that link, donate what you can, sign up to volunteer. And with that, I am, of course, always thrilled to introduce someone who I've been honored to co-author a series of articles with, promoting the idea of a 21st century economic bill of rights. He is really one of the preeminent public intellectuals in America. And really, he is my historian of American history and a dear friend. Harvey J. Kaye, welcome. And Harvey.
Hey, okay, here I am.
Hey, thank you for your patience, Harvey, and welcome. And I'm going to do a thing I should let the staff know. I'm going to go back to my computer and sign on. And the minute I'm signed on that, I'm going to drop this. But Harvey, the floor is yours. Take it away. Your thoughts on patriotism, American history, progressives, the left, the control of the flag by the right. Your thoughts as we are now in the 250th year, so to speak, of the United States of America.
Alan asked me to speak today a bit. He called me on Thursday night. We had a great conversation, some exciting stuff, which hopefully will unfold, not in this talk, but in months ahead. I've decided I'm not going to give a big lecture, okay? I want to lay out a certain set of words and principles and ideas that hopefully will maybe provoke, maybe inspire. I'm more than happy to elaborate if there's time for, those kinds of questions. Let me just say that, and I don't think there's any dissent on this, Americans are angry, but they've been angry for a long time. That's why Trump was able to win. But being angry is not going to assure progressive victories. Being angry is not going to empower and encourage people to act, or even for that matter, to vote. People need to believe that the way things are is not the way they have to be, that indeed there is an alternative. And there are those who would like to offer projections by way of agendas to follow. But the most fundamental thing that you can afford folks who are angry and concerned is an understanding of why they feel the way they do, and to encourage in them what Lincoln might have called the better angels of their natures. Now, history is powerful in that respect, okay? It can afford encouragement. It can afford proof that the way things are is not the way they have to be. It can actually afford the kind of encouragement that says, if we act, we can do this. Maybe not as powerfully as Thomas Paine once put it, we have it in our power to begin the world over again, but it can encourage people to radical action and support of and the fight for progressive reforms. One has to build a narrative, and out of that narrative will emerge a vision, one hopes. Now, I'm going to do something which I hope will not bore you, okay? I'm hoping this will inspire you. Some years ago, back in 2017, I was asked to speak to the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin. And I remember being surprised that they asked me, because they're meant to be this nonpartisan organization and remain so. But when I said, I'm on the left and my views are rooted in radical history, and the woman who was inviting me, who was the executive director, said, that's what we want. That's what we need. This was June 2017. This, of course, was relatively early, about where we are now in a second Trump term, then the first Trump term. So this is what I did. And I'll also note that My very recently dear departed friend Bill Moyers encouraged this and then published the piece that this opens. So bear with me, but I hope this helps. Listen closely to Thomas Paine's argument in Common Sense that we have it in our power to begin the world over again. Listen to the founder's phrases in the Declaration. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Listen to the words of the framers that to secure, the Constitution, what I'm saying, that to secure life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, governments or to the framers, 3 words. All we need is the first 3 words. We, the people, in the preamble. Listen well to Abraham Lincoln speaking at Gettysburg in 1863, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Listen to Franklin Roosevelt telling his fellow citizens in 1936 that this generation of Americans has a rendezvous with destiny, and calling on them just a few years later to fight for freedom of speech and expression, freedom of worship, freedom from want, freedom from fear, and then went on, as Alan noted a little while ago, to lay out the first vision of an economic Bill of Rights for all Americans in the 1944 State of the Union. Listen to Martin Luther King sermonizing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in 1963. I still have a dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. Now, those are not just memorable words. Those are revolutionary, radical, democratic words. Words that at critical times proclaimed, affirmed, and articulated anew America's revolutionary promise and purpose. Words that charged and recharged American life with radical, imperative, and democratic impulse. Words inspired by and inspiring of the democratic labors and struggles of generations. Words empowered by and empowering of grand democratic transformations. And those words speak to you. They speak to us, don't they? They speak to us as Americans because we still believe in the nation's promise. We continue to feel that imperative and that impulse. We too yearn to transform the nation. They speak to us as Americans because for all of our faults and failings, for all of the oppression and tragic contradictions that have marked our history, and for all of the many efforts by the powers that be to have us think otherwise of ourselves, we remain radicals at heart. The time has come to recognize it. The time has come to embrace our radical history, indeed to take hold of that history and to make America radical once again. And when's the last time you heard a democratic, capital D, democratic politician truly embrace the American story and truly grab hold of it to make politics different, better, and progressive? I mean, think about that. Here's the questions that I would pose. Do we recall how a generation of Americans, high and low, and in all their diversity, not only turned their colonial rebellion into a war for independence, but also imbued American life, whether they all intended it or not, with radical imperative and impulse by declaring a revolutionary promise of freedom, equality, and democracy? Do we recall how generations of radicals and progressive reformers served as the prophetic memory of that promise, and how generations of ordinary men and women, native born and immigrant, struggled to make real the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and to expand not only the we in We the People, but also the powers of the people? And most especially in view of the crisis we ourselves face, this last paragraph, this last question, to me, should speak directly to what we confront today. do we recall how, both inspired by Washington, Lincoln, and FDR, and pushing them to go further than they might otherwise have gone, our greatest generations confronted and prevailed over the forces that threatened to destroy the nation and bury its promise, its revolutionary promise, in the 1770s, the 1860s, and the 1930s and 1940s, by acting to make the United States radically freer, more equal, and more democratic than ever before. I mean, just think about it. Those folks who get more books written about them as generations than anybody, those folks who are at the heart of every American history textbook, those folks who go down to Washington, D.C., walk the monuments, it will remind you of who we take to be really important in American life and the making of American democratic life, okay? Now, the question is this. And I'm gonna go out on a limb here because I know progressives don't like to hear this kind of question. Conservatives and reactionaries, conservatives all the time harp on American exceptionalism. Liberals, when pushed to answer the question, do you believe in American exceptionalism, inevitably say yes, or they dance around it. We are failing on the left to appreciate what actually makes America exceptional. And I would argue, first of all, there is an basically unparalleled radical tradition, an unparalleled progressive tradition in this country, first of all. But the other thing is this. Those generations that I referred to, of the Revolution, of the Civil War, of the Depression and World War II, might never have bought into this argument that I'll offer you. But what's fascinating is that when, as I said, the nation's purpose and promise was in mortal jeopardy, somehow, it wasn't just luck of Washington, Lincoln, and Roosevelt. For, again, faults and failings, we know them. I mean, I'm tired of answering the question. Yes, I know the tragedies that ensued. But let me make it clear. Those generations did what no other generations in other places were so consistently doing. And that is, when the promise of America or the promise of any people was in jeopardy, they made sure to answer that challenge, whether it was the British, whether it was the Confederates, whether it was the corporate bosses of the 1930s or the fascists and Nazis of the 1940s, they radically transformed America. They did so by way of not just fighting for the promise that did not prevail for all, but led to the creation of not only an independent United States, but also the making of a democratic republic that led to, by way of the struggles of slaves escaping from the South, northern working people enlisting or being recruited into the Union Army, they made a revolution of that Civil War. And in the 1930s, the empowerment of labor was an extraordinary moment. Social Security, the National Labor Relations Act, the transformation of the national infrastructure, the improvement of the national infrastructure in favor of a better environment. I won't go through all the alphabet soup of agencies. In World War II, the way in which we were able to fight despite the divisions, Goebbels, I believe it was, said, oh, it's going to be easy to beat America. The divisions among Americans will lead them to collapse. Well, there were radical developments even during World War II. Americans not only enlisted in the war effort, they also enlisted in labor unions. I mean, the labor movement had already grown by millions in the 30s. It grew all the more so in the 1940s. My point is that what made those, in quotes, greatest generations truly great is that they confronted mortal crises, and they they confronted and transcended those crises by making America radically freer, more equal, and democratic. We face a mortal crisis of democracy. We have been facing this for many years. Okay. Now we not only face it, we're being slapped in the face by it. And I think that now is the time we lay hold of that history, we lay claim to that history, and we do everything in our power to remind Americans by don't let any politician get off the hook without talking about America's radical and progressive story. Okay. I mean, it is absolutely imperative that we remember these kinds of things. Okay. I mean, that's my thesis for today, and I'm happy to respond or elaborate. I will just note that Hartzell will be following me in some fashion here. Hartzell and I did for 2 years a podcast. He had a daily morning podcast that he produced. And once a week on Tuesdays, we issued a podcast that went through the American story by way of the great words, the radical and progressive words of the American story. And again, by speakers in all the diversity, men and women, native born and immigrant, Black, white, brown, okay? And the response was really, really good. But of course, we weren't on national radio, so there was a limit to our reach. Anyhow, that's my point today. I may have left some stuff out. I may have gone on too long, but
it was absolutely sublime and brilliant, I thought. And I do want to say, by the way, I got interrupted near the top of the hour because my camera went off and I had to get back on my handheld. I'm on my regular computer now, and I didn't get to lay out the ground rules of what we do now. We're going to go to Q&A for the general audience shortly. We're going to hear from Donna and from Hartzell first. And I do want to say that we'll go to the PDA to-dos at the top of the hour now. We had our schedule thrown off, but obviously we did get to encourage people to volunteer in general and volunteer for Adelita's campaign. People still should do that and donate to Adelita's campaign. I will hold my question until after we hear from Hartzell, since you prompted him, and then Donna for their thoughts on Harvey's. And then somewhere down the line, I'll have a question or two to throw in. I thought that was spectacularly beautiful, Professor Kaye. That wasn't a home run; it was a grand slam to win the ball game. Go ahead, Hartzell Gray.
Well, I feel like you're about to hear an echo because I am a student of one Professor Harvey J. He's a mentor, he's a brother, so you're going to hear a lot of echoes, but it's the truth. And before I start, I just want to take an exhale because we have had a hell of a week. But what I want to say, and I guess one of the reasons why I think I was brought on this call this week, is to give us that progressive pump up, right? And it's funny that Professor Kaye mentioned our Taking Back America series, because I actually wanted to kick this off with a quote, one that Professor Kaye and I analyzed and spoke on our podcast. In fact, maybe we'll drop some links. I'll see if I can't find some links. And I think it's very timely too, especially, we just celebrated the 4th of July. And I know that often, especially here recently, more folks have been introduced to or familiar with Frederick Douglass. What to the Slave is the 4th of July. It's an incredible speech. One of the timeless classics in American history, right? And for a lot of friends, even friends of mine, and well-intended folks, right? I think a lot of people will use that speech as, when it talks about the carrot and the stick, I think sometimes they use that speech as the stick. If the carrot is the American promise of it all, then I think too many of our folks get caught up in the like I said, the stick of it. And let me explain what that means, right? Because in the beginning of that speech, it's a scathing indictment, right? Frederick Douglass, a man who was a slave, who would have every reason to sink and devolve into cynicism and nihilism. And at the beginning there, you think he's about to just go off on these folks. And again, rightfully so, right? He says, do you have me here to mock me, right? And again, he goes in and lets these folks have it. Because we do need to address our history. If we're going to take hold of it, like Professor Kaye says, which is what we have to do as progressives, then we need to actually be able to look at the reality of our history. Professor Kaye was right. I'm a New Deal Democrat, an FDR Democrat, but FDR had faults and flailings as well. But we don't get stuck up on that, right? Just like Frederick Douglass did not get stuck up on that in that moment because he knew he had an audience where he could actually show that in spite of the founders who weren't speaking to him, they made the mistake of putting that American promise on paper, which means it's ours, right? And so even what seems to be a scathing indictment, at the end, I feel like folks forget about this. They forget about the carrot when it comes to the carrot and the stick. This is at the very end of what to the slave is the 4th of July. And this is what Frederick Douglass said. He said, I therefore leave off where I began, with hope, while drawing encouragement from the Declaration of Independence, the great principles it contains, and the genius of the American spirit. It's cheered on by the obvious tendencies of the age. Nations do not now stand in the same relation to each other that they did ages ago. No nation can now shut off itself from the surrounding world and trot around in the same old path of its fathers without interference. It goes on to say that again, the old way is broken, as Thomas Paine would say, it's ours now to begin again. And there's no excuse anymore. And that is only real, we can only make that true if we have the moral clarity to stand on the side that's going to actually progress that American promise. And we know that the only way we can do that is through a progressive lane, through progressive politics, because progressive politics, populist politics, it's just lived experiences of the people, right? And so I am encouraged, believe it or not, like Frederick Douglass, I actually am encouraged. In spite of a week where we saw 17 million of our brothers and sisters kicked off of healthcare, in my state, in Missouri, we're going to have close to, 280,000 of my neighbors just lost their healthcare. 18% of Medicaid cuts, 20% cuts to SNAP. It's an assault. And all that money is going to billionaires and to build new concentration camps for ICE. Right. And I actually wrote this down. I don't know if you all have seen this stat yet from what was in this bill. The ICE budget is now going to be $37.5 billion, right? That is now, just for ICE, that budget is bigger than the defense budgets of nations like Italy, Israel, the Netherlands, Brazil, and Switzerland. Their defense budget is less than our ICE budget. Now, this is all terrible, and we know that. But here's why I'm encouraged. Because their overreach, my friends, I used to tell our folks that I really hope that we're going to get universal coverage, in my kids' lifetime. I'm sure there's folks on this call who have said, I know that my kids and my grandkids are going to see universal healthcare. I'll tell you right now, we are going to see universal healthcare. You and me and everybody on this call, because you can't take 17 million people's healthcare away and then expect us to go back to whatever the status quo was. In 2026, we could take back the majorities in the House and the Senate. But best believe going back to a stalled Obamacare is not going to win over the hearts and minds of people who we want to include in our progressive politics, right? You can't have our folks, our brothers and sisters who just lost access to housing and then say that you want to give a bunch of money to private developers. No, you have to champion social housing. If we don't have healthcare, we have to champion universal healthcare. If we can't afford that rent, then we need to champion a living wage, cost of living. If we want to do something about the climate, then we need to champion a Green New Deal. This all is related in this. In this moment, we need folks who can say that, because that is the inverse of fascism. It's what FDR said. It is fulfilling on the material needs of our people. So if they put the pendulum this way, with our blood, our sweat, and our tears, and our organizing and our fighting, we can bring it back the other way. In fact, it is who we are as Americans to bring it back the other way. Because at our core, like Professor Kaye said, we are radicals, we are progressives. In the first line of the Declaration of Independence, it says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those are things that are ours, non-negotiable. But as Professor Kaye has said so eloquently, it is a roadmap of what was laid out. This is how you do it. Life, here we are, bunch of woke folks. So what do we do with that? We got to find a way to, I guess, put this stuff together. So let's call that liberty. Let's call that democracy. So what do we do with all these woke folks who want to put together democracy? Well, what's the point of the democracy if it is not that pursuit of happiness? So what does that happiness look like? It's universal health care. It is tuition-free college. I mean, this bill also, I don't know if you looked in some of the nitty-gritty when it comes to student loans. I mean, there are kids now who no longer will be able to go to college because certain grants or loans have just been completely taken away. So what should we say as not just progressives, but as a Democratic Party who actually wants to win things again? We should say not that we should do better at trying to cancel some people's loans here if you've done this for 20 years. No, it means we need to wipe student loans and we need tuition-free college and trade schools. Like, that is the answer. But the issue for me and for so many of our folks, like in my district, right, in Kansas City, Missouri, the Missouri 5th, my congressman is Emanuel Cleaver. And everything I just said, I bet makes a whole lot of sense to us, right? They took our health care away. Well, then we should all have universal health care. Yeah, that's no brainer, right? You know, well, I don't have a congressman that would say that because my congressman has the ideology of decades and decades previous. You know, my congressman is not going to say that we need Medicare for all, or at the bare minimum, some sort of single payer public option, something. He won't even say that. You know, my congressman, if we're in this moment where healthcare is being stripped away, which is going to take away from abortion care, right? Because healthcare is a human right. Abortion care is healthcare. I don't know math all that well, but I think that's the transitive property, right? It's all ours, is the point. I don't have a congressman in my district that will say the word abortion. You know, he's an 80-year-old minister. He's a good man. I've got his yard sign from 1991 hanging up in my studio. He ran for mayor. He's a good man, but we are angry. We are fed up, but we also know what we need. And if we don't have people there who are going to provide us what we need, then why are you there? You know, those closest to the problem are not just closest to the solution. I would say that, my friends, we are the solution, right? And so all these things we are saying, it ain't crazy. It's always been ours. Not only does it make sense, it polls well if we want to get into all that. But the problem is we don't have the folks in there to preach that vision. It's not just telling me what's in the bill. It's telling me what is your vision to get us out of it. And that's what I hope that in this moment that I can provide, that so many of our young folks, but also our older folks, also our professionals, also anybody who wants to stand on the side of peace, justice, liberation, and the people. You know, it's not just that the president usurped his power when he struck Iran. Yeah, he did that and it's terrible. That's an impeachable offense. Duh. But the problem is we should not be going to war. You know what I mean? And it's how we should be approaching these things now, because this moment requires nothing less. And in my district, in my city, in my state, just like everybody else in your city, in your state, in your district, the fight continues. That's why we're here. And I'm not going to stop. And we're going to find more ways for us to do all the good shit, all the good things together. Sorry, I'm excited. Because the power of the people, we can do some extraordinary things. Dare I say, we can do some extraordinary shit. So thank you. And I don't know who I'm sending it to next. Alan.
Well, Harvey, then Donna.
That was wonderful. That was wonderful, Hartzell.
Love you, brother.
And then Donna Smith. The floor is yours.
Well, first of all, I want to thank anybody who joined this town hall today, because I was asking friends and folks to join today. So thank you very much. Professor Kaye, thank you for the comments that you made about the country. I also am a historian, graduated Phi Beta Kappa from, and with my degree in history. American history was my thing. And my hero, much to the chagrin of everyone around me at times, is Thomas Jefferson. And I know all the reasons, so no one needs to point them out why he should not be my hero. And yet we didn't mention him as a writer today. And because I'm a writer, I have to give deference to what I think was the most elegantly written document perhaps we have ever seen in the country, and in the Declaration of Independence. And he was so proud of that he did not put his presidency on his own tombstone. He did put down that he was the author of the Declaration of Independence. And I always looked at those words as something that had the power to transform not only the country at the time, but the power in a very lasting way to keep transforming the country. You know, there aren't very many people, I'm going to just rest, there aren't very many people among us right now who've read Thomas Paine. Really, if you go out into the general population, a lot of people don't know, either they don't know who he is or they don't know what he wrote. And I think sometimes we get tied into those moments in history that we know that are familiar to us, and we forget that there are some that are familiar to almost all of us as Americans. And Thomas Jefferson's words, when in the course of human events, I mean, even that introductory phrase, when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary. And I think that still speaks to me, so much so that when I testified to the House Judiciary Committee long ago, and I was so frightened to do it, because I felt so much responsibility of what I was going to say about healthcare and about having gone bankrupt even with insurance, that I had a cab take me to the Jefferson Memorial, and I read my testimony to Thomas Jefferson. That's how powerful that kind of connection is through history. And the more powerful thing to me was that as I did that, feeling a little weird for standing there in the middle of a national monument, reading testimony, the people around me grew silent, and they listened, and they paid attention, as if they understood there was something going on, some kind of a moment going on where we could connect with what was our power and what still is our power today. Is that we believe when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary. It's necessary right now, isn't it? It is necessary. And yet many of us don't know what to do, right? We don't specifically know what to do. Yes, we're going to elect progressives into office. That's a given. PDA's been about that for a long time. But I was on a call this week where somebody very important in my life, Keith Ellison, he is now the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota, talked about how the battle we face now will not be won at the ballot box. It's going to be won in the streets. And I think he's right. I heard this long ago from Tom Cronin, who is an expert on the American presidency, about the fact that we, the people, need that kind of power and that kind of infusion from our past. We need that. We need that connection to who we thought we were, no matter what Jefferson's failings were. Those words stay with us. So when I thought this week about, I've been thinking a lot, obviously, about what's happened with Medicaid and what this will do to people. It's devastating, and I think it's very hard for me to internalize what that means for so many families because of what my family lived through. But I came up with this idea that I think is probably pretty simple, this idea of rest in peace. We're not rest in peace, the RIP thing needs a little bit of an overhaul in my mind. We're not resting and we're not at peace, are we? None of us, or very few of us, feel like we're at peace. I'm an American woman who's spent a lifetime fighting to create a more equal society. And yet, in just a few months, the regime in power has tried to negate the entirety of my life's work. Too bad for them that they can't wipe out the soul that is America as I have known it. And thank God for us all that they cannot. Yet our belief in the people of this nation to rise up for justice must be filled with our own commitment to do more than meet these Sunday afternoons to comfort our weary souls. You know, Mike Fox always tells us we're here with people who get it. And we are. We're with our brothers and sisters, and that's powerful. We need that. But today I'm asking you to join me in at least one rest in peace act every day. Resist is the R. Resist injustice. You'll know it and feel it when it's happening around you. I know. You've seen it. You've felt it. Did you speak up? Did you say something? Did you stand for that person? Insist on equality when you see it's not happening. That's the I, the insist. Insist on equality. And I'm insisting, and Alan knows this, I'm insisting that we get better at PDA about our equality. And we get better about recognizing women as the intellectual powerhouses that we are. We are smart too. And if I dare say, my Phi Beta Kappa history tells me that as intellectuals, those of us who are Phi Beta Kappa must stand up. And finally, persist in reaching out, not just to your elected officials. Yeah, that matters. Reach your neighbors, reach your friends, reach your coworkers, reach all of them. Start having little pop-up discussions, if you haven't already, about what it means to you to be an American, what it means to you to stand in this course of human events. Because we're standing in them, folks. We're standing right in the middle of them. And we're not going to win this by waiting till 26. My God, what have they done in this last few months? What have they done? We can do more. All of us, we can do more. I know I can. I know I can. And if every day I just remember to resist, to insist, and to persist, all three of those things, then maybe in this course of human events, we will find a way to make that difference that ignites our brothers and sisters around us to that higher goal that Jefferson ignited in me a long time ago and continues to ignite. So thank you all for listening to me. Alan, I'll throw it back to you. Professor Kaye, I didn't exactly talk in the same terms that you did, but I think what you know is that, yes, radicalism lives. Radicalism is in all of us. And that radical is because we're taught to love one another, love each other enough to fight. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Donna. That was beautiful. I wrote resist, insist, and persist into the chat. Harvey, just your response, then to our PDA to-dos, and then questions from the audience for if Harvey can still stay. I know we only asked him to stay for a short while, but for Donna, Hartzell, and Harvey, as long as he can stay. But Harvey, your response to Hartzell and Donna.
Well, both were wonderful, and I fully appreciate Thomas Jefferson. For what it's worth, my older daughter went to UVA, and one of the reasons I was very glad she did is that it was Jefferson's university, and she was fully aware of the contradictions. I promise. Okay, and I also want to say to everyone that it's imperative that we do develop a vision. You know, two thoughts occurred to me, and I won't go back into the reading mode, but in 1862, when Lincoln explained the imperative we all know what we must do, basically, as he said, and that is end slavery, okay? And in 1944, when FDR said, we have come to the point in American history where we know what we must do, we must enact an economic Bill of Rights. Well, I would like to imagine, even in the midst of the shadows that we are in, that the 21st century economic Bill of Rights will be top of the agenda of the presidential candidate that we secure in a Democratic Party that right now is practically dead. And we alone can revive it.
I want to add too that I actually had one. If you go back about 30 minutes, 20 minutes ago in this town hall, said I had a question for Harvey, and one comment and one question. One comment is, of course, I did grow up in partly in England and Italy, and of course, trade unions by the post-war period were even stronger in Western Europe than they were in America, certainly in their general influence, partly because of the organization of social democratic parties having labor unions at their core, and they were largely the ruling parties in the first decades after the war in Western Europe. But there was nothing like the American labor struggles and the level of the kind of organization and fight that took place in America was unrivaled in any European country or any country in the world that I know of. I mean, the labor union struggles were unprecedented in this country, and I think that's really lost on American, and Harvey, of course, knows this was lost on the American public. But I did want to ask you, Harvey, about you, and this goes a little bit to Donna's point and to Keith Ellison's. I was on that call as well. By the way, we had a fantastic call on Monday with Representative Jamie Raskin, which was brilliant, a PDA call where I asked him about this question of the 250th anniversary and the necessity in the next year's time, now 364 days from now, to not allow American history to be possessed by MAGA, to reclaim it for progressives. And he gave a brilliant answer, which I'm sure is recorded by the Mike Hirsch and the folks who put that call together on Monday. But you didn't mention the 60s. You highlighted the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and Roosevelt. And I think I understand your logic for doing that because, and this goes a little bit to Donna and Keith Ellison's point, but I'll push back a little bit against it. I think that what's true about 1776 to 1787, the Civil War, and then the Roosevelt era is you both had the progressive forces victorious and they won on governmental policy as well. In the 1960s, we had demonstrations in the street for civil rights and for the Vietnam War that in many respects produced change, but the overarching policies of the government coming out of the 1960s, I mean, Reaganism follows shortly thereafter, and you don't have a consolidation of the progressive impulses of the Revolution, the Civil War, and the Roosevelt era into policy. And so I think, yes, we have to be in the streets now, but the streets have to be mutually tied into, as you just said, Harvey, a kind of political program, a policy program, like the 21st Century Economic Bill of Rights. And for our generation to match those three generations in the way the 60s generation was unable to match it, to actually produce the kind of societal change and generational change. Because you can argue the Great Society, but really it only lasted 15 years or 12 years before you have Reaganism come in. Whereas the Roosevelt changes, the Civil War changes. I mean, you can argue about the end of Reconstruction, but then the revolutionary changes, they really, obviously, the significant, the creation of the United States, the ending of slavery, and then the establishment of the New Deal society were generational victories for the American left. Your thoughts, Harvey?
Well, yeah, and I want to make a historical point. You're absolutely right about coming out of the 60s. And the great tragedy coming out of the 60s, which we ought to take as a lesson going forward, is this. The corporate powers that be from 1970 right through the 1970s, starting with speeches by the likes of David Rockefeller, then the creation of the Trilateral Commission, a whole series of new right initiatives. The corporate powers that be were absolutely fearful that the progressive energies of the 1960s were going to coalesce into an even more effective, if you like,
Right.
1930 style popular front.
Right.
And they declared war on that possibility. And the best evidence for that, I mean, without going into, just go to your public library. They may well have a copy of the Trilateral Commission of 1975, which was not a conspiracy. It was out in the open, and
Right.
it produced a volume, The Crisis of Democracy.
Yeah, too much
Published
democracy.
by New York University Press, really fine university press. And they laid out the problem was too much democracy in America. And they named the groups that had to be calmed down, tempered. Better word would be suppressed. And it had to do with elements in the labor movement, elements of civil rights in the poor people's movement, the women's movement, humanities and social science academics, the student movement. They laid out the enemy, and they pursued class and cultural wars ever after. So we failed ourselves. Those of us I'm old enough to perhaps have, I don't want to be blamed for it, but my generation did fail coming out of the 60s to find a way to bring together that kind of popular front momentum that was so possible coming out of the 60s. The energies were there. But I mean, to go back to something Hartzell said, I was convinced, I think I actually thought aloud about this, that in 1969, 1970, in spite of the Nixon administration, because the Nixon administration actually spent more money on the Great Society, I think, than the Johnson administration did. And it was the Nixon administration that called for a national health care plan and even a family allowance plan. I mean, they were totally different.
And universal payments plan.
That's what I meant, the universal payments plan, right. And I remember thinking it would be definitely the case that by the end of the 70s, we would have what FDR's generation called universal health care in the United States. I had no doubt about it, okay? So it was, if you like, it was a wasted moment, an opportunity. But right now we've got you can feel the energies and the anger. But the point is, the great majority of Americans need to be encouraged, okay? Not merely angry. I mean, we could win in 2026 in congressional terms. We could even win possibly the presidency in 2028, right? But it isn't a matter of just that. It's a matter of Americans letting, by way of propulsion and compulsion, letting their political representatives and political leaders know that we will not go back. We do not want to restore the status quo ante. In fact, as many veterans who came home after World War II said, because they had grown up in the New Deal years, they had fought the war, they said that we see no reason to go back. No reason to go back. And we do not want to go back and restore. I don't want to see the restored Democratic Party anything like the party of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. I want it to be a party that, if it was a younger man, would be the party of the likes Bernie Sanders.
Excuse me for interrupting just a second. Mike, Alan got froze and is back again. If you could co-host him, please.
Thank you, Jim. One moment, please.
Hey, everybody. So, okay, thank you. And look, Adana, I was going to say, I saw your response in the chat, so I was going to call on you just for a response. Then we'll go to questions after Mike Fox gives our PDA to-dos. But Donna, any thoughts in response? I'm back on my handheld, so it's a little hard to see everybody.
Oh, can I just add one thing? I'm sorry. I'm in no rush right now. I do want to respond to the question of the 250th anniversary that you essentially posed, Alan. Okay, that's all. Not now. I'll come back to it. I'd rather Donna have an opportunity to speak.
Hey, yeah,
Right.
I just wanted to point out that there were things accomplished out of that movement of the 60s, and boomers did. Medicare came to be in the 60s, and the Civil Rights Act was passed in the 60s. So there were things that happened during the 60s that the boomers can essentially claim to be a part of, as well as launching the first really, really enormous women's rights movement that over the years has picked away and is nowhere close. And now, unfortunately, we're going to have to use something like a sledgehammer to get back to where we need to be for women. I mean, I'm honest to God, this fight of women's rights you think it gets old? It gets old. 70 years. I'm 70 years old now. And I never thought I'd have to go back and retrace some of those women's rights issues. And unfortunately, I think we will have to. But what gives me courage, and I will say this certainly with Hartzell on the line for sure, is that I heard the good mayor in the beginning say that the Z generation wants change to happen right now. Of course they do. That's their position. That is their position in our generational into organizing and into pushing. And I don't think our world is at all the same as it was in the 60s. It's not the same as it was coming out of Roosevelt's years. It's not the same as it was certainly during the Civil War, and it's not the same as it was in the Revolutionary War. Just the means by which we're communicating now, using this Zoom, seeing each other, talking to each other in instantaneous communication has changed everything from politics to daily life. So I think there has been great change and great progress. I remember John Conyers. I know, John retired at a time when he had a lot of really negative stuff going on around him. I know that. But he always told me and reminded me about that, that moral arc of history bends towards justice, and that any time, for instance, getting the Martin Luther King Day holiday, which was his baby, getting that across the finish line, was kicking that can down the road, kicking it down the road, keep it moving. Yeah, and I think he taught me a lot about the need for both. The push of the younger generation saying, now, we need it now. You've been asking for it for a long time. Now we need it. To the more measured response of older generations sometimes, because they've been fighting it for a long time. We need all of us on it right now. And I think the 60s generation did a lot to change the dynamic and the discussion. And we got quiet for a while. That was our failing, I think. I watched a lot in our generation go after what the capitalist economy sometimes requires of us. We have children, we need to pay bills, we need to make ends meet, we need to do what we have to do to get by. And I remember sitting in traffic, and then I'll close with this, one time in Denver. And I'm in my car, and we're in the backup that's coming out of Denver, trying to go home to our kids and do all the stuff we do. And Born to Be Wild was on the radio, and I had the radio cranked up, and I'm rocking out to Born to Be Wild. And I hear somebody next to me in their car, sitting in this damn traffic jam, coming home from Denver with Born to Be Wild on their radio. And we looked at each other at the same time, and we were like, boy, we are wild, aren't we now? Boy, yeah, boy, we're touching up there. Woohoo! But all of us come to that awakening at some point in our lives that we cannot stand by and watch it go forward. And I think some of us have that very young, some of us get it later. All of us need it. Hartzell, you have something to say too, but I'm going to claim the boomers did a little bit, Harvey. We did a little bit. We pushed that can down the road.
Well, yeah, no, and there's no doubt the cultural transformations in the 1960s were dramatic, to say the least, in terms of how people live in their day-to-day life, hour to hour. That kind of cultural transformation too, and not to negate your points about the political transformations, but yeah, no, I mean, the Victorian era came to a crashing end in the 1960s too. So.
Hey, let me say this. I think actually I got a good way to piggyback on that, and also maybe put a pretty bow on it, because I think what it sometimes so often gets put as a, us, the younger folks versus our elders. And listen, just because somebody's younger does not make them more equipped to meet a moment. I mean, I know a bunch of young folks who have the politics of Joe Biden, and I don't want them anywhere near my legislation. But I think one of the reasons why it gets so reduced down to the young folks versus the older generation or whatever is because we are not used to the concept of co-governing. I don't think that this term comes from the organizing space, of which I'm an organizer with our tenant union. The idea of co-governance means that we work in tandem with those who are elected. And so it is not that one group, if done right, if we have electeds, populists, progressives, because that is how progressives should have as our North Star is co-governing, because that is democracy. It's not doing a thing for the constituent, right? It's walking with the constituents. So if we practice co-governance, all of us, and we have electeds who encourage that, then it does not come across, it does not end up being the young folks are pushing for this, or the climate folks are pushing for that, or the housing folks are pushing for that. Now, instead, when we co-govern, it's all of us holding our people accountable, right? And so that's how we build solidarity, right? Like this, I need Donna and I need Harvey, I need everyone on this call who pushed their electeds during the civil rights movements of the 50s and 60s. I need them to be just as much as accountable with me in 2025 as you were, Donna, when you wanted some of your elders back then to help you push this thing forward. You know what I mean? So it's not just I want to claim your victory, Donna, just as much I want you to claim our victories that we're doing, not just now, but going forward, right?
You, Hartzell, are a victory.
We
are
victorious,
understand,
though, Donna.
understand,
I can be a
cannot see
victory,
you.
but we're
Yeah.
victorious.
Okay, but when I see you and I hear you and I internalize what you say, you are one of the victories that my generation can rest on, and not rest and not do more, but can use as the power and the courage and the strength to keep going forward. So Hartzell, keep it up, keep it up. You are giving us strength even now, so keep it up.
Thank you, Hartzell. Thank you, Donna. Mike Fox, why don't you give us our PDA to-dos for this week? We have 32 more minutes. If Hartzell, Harvey, or Donna have to leave, we'll just continue with comments and questions from the audience until 3 o'clock.
And I am so hard. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry and Harvey all combined into one. I am so sorry, but I have to go do I'm getting married, my friends, September 13th. It's coming very quickly, and I think I gotta make some space in Kansas City for Harvey K, who's making the trip with his wonderful wife. But I've got a wedding meeting I've got to hop on to. So I love you all, and I gotta make sure that the mom and then the future mom are all happy. You understand how this works, y'all. Y'all know how this works, right?
Love to you. That's a valid excuse. Thank you.
I love you all. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I hope to have some more news and keep offering ways that we're going to take back this American promise. Hopefully have some more news very soon.
Thank you for your beautiful presentation too. We appreciate that. Thank you. Mike Fox.
All right, gang. My favorite part of the week. Here we go. First and foremost, the thank yous. The following people have donated during this call. We love you. Starting off with our sister Dorothy. Thank you so much, Dorothy. Always here. Thank you for your more than kind $100. And Debbie and Samuel, Linda, Phone Banker Beverly, Double Dippin', Kurt, Paul, Donald, Joseph, Ingrid, Phone Banker Lois, Double Dippin', making calls and giving money. Thank you so much. Kathleen, Linda, and another Dorothy in the house. This one, Dorothy M. out of Indianapolis. Thank you, Dorothy. And Margaret and Phone Banker Ken out of Arizona. Thank you, Ken. And Roberto and Claire, Barbara, Peggy, Lorna, Phone Banker Carl, Double Dippin', Phone Banker Newland, Double Dippin', Valerie, Susan, Francis, Elizabeth, Karen, Bob, our state coordinator out in Missouri. Thank you, Bob. Phone banker Betsy double dipping, and our huge thank you, Hillary, my sister in Florida, for your way more than kind $250, gang. As a crew, I'm challenging us all. Let's see if we can match Hillary's $250 here in the next 10 minutes. 5, 10, 20, 100, whatever you can give. And Max and phone banker Max and Neil and Connie, Nadine, phone banker Charlotte double dipping, Mark, Karen, phone banker Rick, our brother Russell, state coordinator up in Massachusetts, Russell in the house, and phone banker Michael, Pauline, phone banker Mary, phone banker Michael, double dipping like nobody's business, phone banker Robert, phone banker Michael again, different Michael out in California, phone banker Bill, and Jason, and phone banker Dr. David Sonneborn. Thank you, brother, double dipping as always, and Peter, Mark, phone banker Mary, phone banker Aaron, phone banker Jane, and Walt all donated. Thank you so much. We need to keep this moving, gang. We got this huge election coming up next Tuesday. Please do whatever you can. But the key here is, if you can give 3 figures, please do. But if you can't, that's totally fine. The goal here is solidarity, not necessarily a dollar figure, okay? It's all of us respecting the fact that we're surrounded by people who not only get it, but do something about it. So we're looking for that kind of solidarity. If it's $1, make it happen. If it's 1 hour making phone calls, please make it happen. As all of our speakers have been talking about here, we've got to be in the game in a very substantial and tangible way here, gang. So I know everybody on this call is able to do it. Let's make it happen right now. The links are being tossed in the chat. And back to Alan.
Thank you, Mike Fox. Yep, there we go. And okay, well, let's go to the stack. And again, I am on my handheld. I'm not going to go back. I do not know what's up with my Spectrum internet. Maybe that holiday weekend or the summer heat, who knows, has created a problem for my connection. I fell off twice, so this seems a little bit more reliable, even if it's a little shaky. And it does make it a little hard for me to see the hands that are raised, but I see we have Jim Langford first. And Jim Langford, at least I might not have the list in the same order as other people, but Jim Langford, you're the first person I'm calling on, to take it away, Jim.
Okay, thank you very much, Alan. First, I want to tell everybody in this space, we had over 400 people today, almost 450. And thank everyone for basically following our request. It was really a very easy experience today. And then I wanted to point out that I've been co-hosting this since we started back in, during COVID, and all of the changes that we've been through going forward. But what I look forward to most every single week is hearing what Donna has to say. She is absolutely, she speaks from the heart, and she touches me every time she speaks. And what she had to say today about equality is something that I feel very strongly about, given my own circumstances. And it's something that I've been fighting for, pretty much since I was a kid. And I'm practically the same age as Donna. And so we fight the same fight, and we're doing it all over again. So thank you, Donna.
Jim,
Donna, the floor is yours.
Feel good. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jim. I don't know where that comes from when you're very, very young, but I think I felt that from a very, very early age, raised by Republicans in a Republican household, but also just had this sense that it was wrong for anybody else to suffer. That I just had this sense that suffering on the part of anyone around me was not okay. And I appreciate being able to say a few things on the call. I know I'm getting older. I know I'm kind of the aging end of PDA, But, you know, the reality is there's a lot of us out here. And I'm thinking about a lot of things related to what I need to do in whatever time I have left on this planet. And one of those things is to lift the next generation into their power. And so thank you, Jim, so much for giving me a little bit of
Where
wind
am
there.
I disappeared.
Next, I'm going to call, there's some unmuted people, folks, who need to be muted. Sorry, everybody. Let's go to Maggie, and then we'll go back to Professor Kaye for thoughts on comments. But Maggie Boyd, I'm going to have a hard time unmuting people, folks, on this device. So if somebody can assist me in asking Maggie to unmute, Maggie
I
Boyd.
just did.
I can't. Oh, there we
Good.
go.
Maggie, you're up.
Okay, I just tried. I have a question.
Yep.
I don't even know if it's relevant to what we're talking about here, but I'm going to ask it anyway. That guy, Mark Green from Tennessee 07, resigned yesterday. He's a Republican. He's also kind of an idiot. Well, he's from Tennessee, so but there is the Tennessee 3 were in the state legislature, the two Justins and Gloria, and I looked up Justin Jones, and he is in the district where Mark Green is. He should run for that. Somebody needs to get to him. He's a good guy. I don't know what the optics are in the district, but is there something we can do for that?
Well, first of all, I do appreciate that you named 3 brilliant Tennessee people after you insulted the people of Tennessee. But that's I'm joking as I say that. I know you didn't intend it that way. It obviously depends on the you know, this what are called the splits in the district. You know, they gerrymandered Tennessee, folks. If people don't know this, they did one of the most extreme gerrymanders ever. I think it might be the top in my lifetime that I've ever seen. Jim Cooper, who was a Democratic representative for Metro Nashville, was unchallenged by a Republican his last election. They drew the districts in the state. It had 7 Republicans and 2 Democrats representing Memphis and Nashville. Jim Cooper and the guy who's still out there from Memphis. I can't remember his name right now, but I have an image of him in my mind. He's a Jewish American rep from Memphis, Democrat. They drew the state. They took Metro Nashville and they sliced it in a way as to make it 8 Republican districts and now 1 Democratic district. They picked up another district. That usually does mean that they are hedging more competitive races, right? So it is worth looking into. Of course, for the young man who you referenced being from the 7th district, as it is now, after the redraws for the 2022 election, it's possible that it's not a competitive district, so it wouldn't be wise for him to sacrifice his position in the assembly for it. But it's certainly worth looking into, because when you do that kind of radical gerrymandering, you take districts that are 65-35 and inevitably you turn them into, 58-42s, 57-43s, and they do become tighter to maintain their grip on them. So it's a great point, and we'll look into it. Thank you for that. Let's all, Mike and Mike, we have so many Mikes on our staff. Let's all look into that. Now to Peter Ponshock. Harvey, let's go for one more person, then we'll go back to Harvey and Donna. Peter, please unmute.
I'm out. Hey, I'm Peter. I'm a social worker in Brooklyn, New York. Professor Kaye, thank you so much, and thank you, everybody. I love these meetings. You said at the beginning that Americans are angry, and I just wanted to suggest a nuance. I think that the people on the MAGA side are angry, and the people, just to overgeneralize, and the people on our side get angry. And I think there's a difference. I think that they are mutated by anger. There was an image that captured it in their convention when Hulk Hogan tore his shirt open and referenced the Incredible Hulk. I think they're mutated by anger. I think they feel that their straight white male identity is threatened, and they feel like they're in an existential battle. And we are still in officer and a gentleman mode. So I just offer that by way of helping us tune into what the hell we're up against. I see things also in terms of Planet of the Apes, like we're the chimpanzees fighting the gorillas in that sense. Anyway, I don't know if you want to comment on my on my point.
I love the imagery. Okay, what I'm thinking back to is in 2016, and so that we're talking a good 9 to 10 years. The reason Trump was able to win in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, which gave him the presidency, is that American voters in these states were angry. They were pissed off, and they had no intention of voting for a Clinton, okay, and for that matter, and whether it was Bill or Hillary running, because they remembered NAFTA. I mean, we don't want to underestimate the memory of working people. Okay, it's not only historians and the chattering classes who have memories. Working people remembered NAFTA. They also remembered the so-called Welfare Reform Act under Clinton, and they remembered Hillary saying they couldn't see how American business could afford $15 minimum wage or national health care. So I think when they voted for Trump in this state, they were ready to punch the Democratic Party in the nose. They were then angry. Were they still angry? Are we angry in the same way? I don't think we're angry in the way you were getting at. I don't think viscerally we're angry. But I do think, I think American working people who historically had voted for Democrats are angry, and they're disappointed. And it's going to take a hell of a lot of imagination for them to be drawn back to a liberal, but especially a progressive kind of voting pattern.
Donna, your thoughts on that? Because I think it's from your perspective, from someone who does foreground the concerns of American women in your political thinking. I mean, I certainly see and it has been a big component of the rise of the media right, is this backlash of, Jordan Peterson and some, mentioning Hulk Hogan, the angry white male or the angry men in reaction. How do you see that? How central is that to the Trumpian reaction?
Yeah, I think I underestimated to a certain extent how powerful that angry white male, the podcasts that were being directed at young men and being, right, getting them to tie into some kind of old macho thing that was there. But I think what I have felt is this, to Peter when he was speaking, this anger that I feel goes deeper. And it's not an anger that is violent anger. It's an anger that's rocking my soul, and I don't know how to explain it, except to say that I believe those words. I'll repeat them again. I believe those words that we, when in the course of human events, we have a responsibility. I have a responsibility. If I believe in the promise and the promises that have been made to me over time, if I believe in those and if I've internalized them, and I have clearly, then the anger I feel is one of, don't you dare touch what matters so much to this country. Don't you dare, yes, we want to move forward and we want to make things better and we want to progress, but please don't destroy that internal sense, not of exceptionalism. That's not the feeling. The feeling is of ownership of my country and my country's values, which to me was this pursuit of happiness, this life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What gorgeous words, what beautiful words to withstand that course of time, right? To withstand so many generations of people here saying, this is what I believe. This is what I believe. So please, and also the other thing I keep trying to keep in mind is, I don't hate the people who voted for Trump. I don't hate them. I don't harbor hate for them. Are some of them kind of scary when I confront them? Yeah. Like the guy I saw coming out of 7-Eleven the other day with a t-shirt that said, women shouldn't vote. What? In 2025, you see a dude coming out of 7-Eleven? Anyway, my husband, when I got back in the car, he said, I'll bet you wanted to say something to that guy. And I said, yeah, I sure did, but he was a lot bigger than me and a lot younger than me. So I chose in that moment not to. Had that been someone more than I felt, although nobody would have worn a shirt like that if I could talk to him. But I think later in the parking lot at the grocery store, I saw a young couple that reacted to the sticker we still have on our car that says healthcare, not warfare. So I said to them, and the young man said, boy, if that isn't true. I said, wow, it's kind of scary right now, isn't it? And so we stood there in the parking lot and talked for a few minutes. That's what I mean by persist. That's what I mean by persist. Everybody doesn't have to do everything, but we all got to do something. And we all have to talk to each other, and we all have to believe that other Americans hold at their core that feeling that we all deserve those rights, that we all deserve the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I do. I believe that at my core. Back to you, Alan.
Same here. Thank you very much. Very eloquent. Angela Vullo, please unmute if again staff can ask Angela to unmute. Angela, there you go. You're unmuted.
Yeah, okay. This is for Dr. Kaye, Angela Vullo from the Coalition for a National Infrastructure Bank. I think that all the great words that people said about the, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So all the radical words are really great, particularly Dr. Kaye. I think the issue is how do we turn these radical words into radical action? And I think that we've been at this for 249 years, and it's about time we fulfill what we won in the American Revolution. I think that we should look to FDR because he's the best example of winning against oligarchy and fascism. You know, how did he do this with the New Deal? And I'd like Dr. Kaye to comment on how he paid for this when there was no money. How did he do this with the Reconstruction Finance Corporation? I'm proposing that we do this with a National Infrastructure Bank. We've got a bill now being drafted for Congress. There was a bill in the previous Congress with almost 50 sponsors, but we've got to act now because we're running out of time. So Dr. Kaye, I'd like you to respond to that.
FDR, actually, strangely enough, was very concerned about budgets, but he was more than prepared to tax the rich. In fact, in 1934, he addressed Congress or sent a message to Congress calling for a cap on wealth and income. And he said this was both in favor of pursuing the New Deal and also because, I'll take a word out of Stephanie Kelton's book, that it would lead to an even worse democracy deficit. That is, the wealth and income of the rich, the corporate bosses, was overpowering American democracy. I mean, he made it clear even during his campaign in 1932 that he intended to restructure the class order in this country. I mean, he was going after the Gilded Age robber barons, the Gilded Age bosses. Now, he was prepared, okay, when necessary, sure, to run deficits. But the other thing was he was prepared to tax the rich. And by the way, I heartily support the National Infrastructure Bank. I'm just going to say that Stuart Rosenblatt, who I guess you know, left a message on an answering machine for me at the university, and I'm not regularly at the university, but someone sent me the message, and I was supposed to call him about talking to, I think, a group of you about FDR. So when I stop speaking, I'm going to put my phone number in for you, Angela, if you want to give me a call right after, okay?
Thank you for that. Good to organize on the call. We're going to go to Donald Smith, then Dan O'Neill, and then Dorothy Wright. Donald Smith, you're up. You're unmuted.
Okay, so I'm reading now the book, The Myth of American Idealism, How U.S. Foreign Policy Endangers the World by Noam Chomsky and Nathan Robinson. And the reason I mention this is because what is happening now in the U.S. with the destruction of democracy is what the U.S. did all over the world, you know, for last 7,500 years or, you know, even before then, but especially after World War II, we destroyed we overthrew democratically elected governments all over the world if they were slightly independent of the US and had any sort of socialist or any policy that would favor the local people. And the second thing I wanted to say is I got this email from the Social Security Administration. Social Security applauds passage of legislation providing historic tax relief for seniors. I heard that that's a scam. It's a lie. If anyone knows about that, please comment.
Well, I got it too. Well, the second one, I just assumed that's because the Social Security Administration has a Trumpster who's in charge of it. I certainly got it. Other people did. I mean, you know, between spam and anything coming out of the Trump administration, it might be very hard to distinguish between the two. Yeah. That's my thought on that. On the first one, go ahead, Harvey J.K.
Well, Donna may have more details because I've already blanked on the details. But it is the case. There's going to be sort of a tax credit kind of thing on Social Security for people making under $150,000. It's for a set of years, and it pales by comparison to the permanency of the tax cuts for the wealthy.
Let's go
I think
to
they were just taking a victory lap, Alan. I think
the
Musk and Trump people were just taking a victory lap, and you know, yes, Harvey K. is right about there being a certain tax credit for people, but it's a very limited number of people it's really going to impact.
Right.
And that's like throwing a carrot to people and say, oh, see, I didn't do anything bad to Social Security.
I don't know if either of you want to comment on Don's foreign policy point, except to agree with it. I mean, obviously, U.S. foreign policy was rife with contradictions in the Cold War era and afterwards, of course.
Yes.
Dan O'Neill, you're up.
Hey, Alan. Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Can you
yes,
hear me okay, Alan?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Oh, okay. I
Can you
just
hear
wanted to
me?
make sure. Thank you, Harvey, for being on. 90%, 95% of what you say, I totally agree with. And of course, Donna Smith, our own Donna Smith. Look, I may be taking a little different angle here. Malcolm X said, the American dream is the American nightmare. And you know that, and you know the history more than anyone else. By the way, I also taught history in high school, in middle school, and I used Howard Zinn's famous book, The People's History. But I really am concerned with that kind of a trend, and it didn't get into it as much, but American exceptionalism. Are you arguing for a new form of American exceptionalism, more left acceptable, historical, progressive form of American exceptionalism? Because if that's the case, I have big problems with that, because I am totally against the concept of American exceptionalism, and I want to move people to that transformation from capitalism, which we have now, exploitative capitalism, to some kind of form of democratic socialism. So I don't know, that's a lot for right now, but could you maybe expand on the American exceptionalism thing? Yeah.
The American exceptionalism thing is not something that one would wear as a badge around the world that I'm referring to. What I'm getting at is Americans we progressives in a public education style way, we have failed to educate our fellow citizens to the fact that what truly makes American history radical is the fact that not only have there been struggle after struggle ever since the 1770s to realize the promise of the Declaration, but it's also the case that when the promise itself was in mortal jeopardy, I can't even fully explain it other than to say that promise was so powerful in the minds of Americans that they found it in themselves to actually act in a radical way and radically transform America from what it was to America as the Declaration itself might have proposed, or at least more in that direction. I'm not celebrating every outcome of the revolution or the Civil War or anything else, but it is the case that radical transformation did occur. And it is an amazing feat for a people. And I think that what makes America exceptional is a promise that people absorb and embrace. And let me add, okay, it ain't working right now.
It's definitely not working.
It's not working right now. So it's not any genetic makeup or anything else. And the reason it's not working right now is ever since the 1970s, I'll be blunt about it, not only the Democratic Party, but whatever was the left, whatever is the left today, because I'm not sure what the left is today, has failed to embrace that kind of politics. We have spent far too much. Look, you cannot know American history without teaching about slavery, about the oppression of women. You can't do that, okay? But it's also the case, you can't teach it effectively if you don't talk about the struggles that brought an end to slavery, that led to women's suffrage. I mean, I think we've spent far too much time on the tragedy and the irony and not enough on the historic, if you like, radical transformations. That's why I call it American exceptionalism, only to the extent that I want people to think carefully about what I'm talking about. I want them to be shaken the way you were shaken by my use of the term. That's my view. But I'll also confess to you, I am not a fan of Howard Zinn's book because it really does fail to appreciate the struggles. And we can talk about it anytime you want.
Definitely, I have to disagree with you on that. But that's okay.
That would be a whole nother call because that's a professional historian and Howard Zinn, and that would be. Thank you, Dan. I really appreciate your comments. I actually want to maybe bring Donna back in here, but I want to say something which I suppose I haven't chimed in at length here for a second. And do I have my camera on? I can't really tell right now. Yeah, there it is. So Harvey Milk. Clearly, one of the agendas and a top line agenda of the Trump administration, I think, like there are many top line agendas in this, what is an avalanche of fascist reactionary politics that are being imposed upon the country and to a degree the world, is the changing of our history and how it's taught and the attacks on academia. Harvey made the little point about in 1975, the documents stated that you needed to attack, the left-wing humanities and social studies. And that's certainly in effect right now. But also directly, I mean, the unnaming of a ship after Harvey Milk. And again, I think not to lean entirely towards Harvey's point or against Dan's at all, but there are these instances where, I mean, I lived through the era. I went to a university where 25% of the student body, which was promoted by the LGBTQ plus community at Yale when I was there, the 25% of the student body, graduate and undergrad, were part of the LGBTQ plus community. And at the time, that was something that was sort of jarring in the early 1980s. And the gay rights, LGBTQ plus rights movement was burgeoning and grew from that era forward spectacularly in my lifetime. And it was incredibly liberating for peers of mine and dear friends of mine at the very same time that in my generation, of course, hundreds and thousands of people that were one degree of separation away from me or just a few degree of separation away from me lost their lives. In a tragedy, by the way, for Gen X and older generations that I don't think is cited often enough in our time. And I should myself cite it more. The AIDS crisis was a terrible tragedy for American society and for communities that I was very close to. And I lost dear friends. And but that happened in America, and I believe was trailblazed here more than any other country. Now, maybe there were some countries in Western Europe that were sort of in lockstep at the same time. But that kind of thing has been true about the United States on a number of fronts in the past few decades. And again, I made reference to a set of cultural transformations that took place in the 1960s that transformed global society, that allowed for more freedom and a greater degree of less restrictions on things that consenting adults could participate in. That the United States again was my perception was sort of in front of any other country in the world. So
just that thought, and again, clearly, Harvey, I would want to hear your thoughts about what is ongoing with the attacks on someone like Milk, a truly heroic figure, and by the way, a great economic progressive as well. You know, and the Trump administration's attacks, and also your thoughts, Don, on what I just said.
Well, I expect the Trump administration to start putting back up the statues that were taken down.
Right.
I mean,
right.
You know,
I agree.
But what I keep wondering is because the question of the streets came up before, I keep wondering what it will take for people to turn out en masse to prevent the reconstruction of those statues.
Yeah, and per my own personal life experience, and toss to Donna here, you know, I love growing up. I love the year I lived in Italy when I was 12, 13 years old. It was probably the very favorite year of my entire life. And when I was in college, I took a year off in between sophomore and junior year. And in that year, I explicitly went to Italy to decide whether I was going to live in Italy. And I think I've told Donna this story before. And what I discovered was a society where gender relations were just, I don't want to use the term evolution, but maybe it's the simplest term. We're not as evolved as they were in the United States. And I also was in England bunches and in France, and maybe only Germany was on the same par with America in terms of the reformed and highly improved gender relations that existed compared to at least middle class and broadly educated Americans. Your thoughts on that, Donna?
Well, I agree with Harvey on the statues that were taken down. A lot of them will probably go back up, and worse. You know, we have here in Colorado, we've had this round robin of naming mountains here, you know, of trying to strip them of any negative connotation and then, you know, put a better name on them. But then, of course, we have the MAGA crowd who wants to get their label on them. And I swear to you, if Trump wants to go up on Mount Rushmore, I may have to lay down my life for that. The reality is I lived and worked in South Dakota for a while and was a newspaper editor there. And the reality is that national monument doesn't need somebody like Trump up on it. And if Jefferson would, no, thank you. But the reality is, in terms of our reactions to things like the milk issue, is I started to get scared when they didn't want a transgender person using the restroom in the Capitol building. I thought that should ignite something. You know, that you remember the old sayings to us about when we all should stand up. I too, Harvey, share that feeling. What is it going to take? What is it going to take for the mass of people to get out there? The thing I do notice now is I'm hearing certain words more often now in conversation, like general strike, like, you know, things are starting to be uttered more. I don't know when that thing will happen. I hope it won't have to be something very violent. That's what I really fear. So stay nonviolent, folks, but stay going in the streets. Stay doing it. No Kings was great. No Kings was great, but we can do more.
Yeah, if I could just add,
by the way,
if I can just add one thing to what Donna said, one thing.
Yeah.
No Kings is great, but I like to think about FDR's words. No economic royalists either.
Yeah, yeah.
Dorothy Reich, you're up.
Finally, my God. So first of all, what makes this country really different is that you can actually become an American. You can go to France and become and get a citizenship probably, but you're never going to be French. You know, you can wherever else you go, you cannot become one of them. You can. So I think that differentiates this country from everybody else. A friend of mine just got her citizenship, and my God, she's from Australia. She could have just gone back to Australia, but she wanted to be a citizen, and she's a radical. I put 8647 on her little cake that we got her to celebrate, because I couldn't just put an American flag on it, but she still wanted to be here because she could. And she said the ceremony was really touching. Everybody was, but when Trump came on to give his little video, everybody booed for him. They all booed him in the auditorium there. So what I want to say is that what's missing from this conversation, I believe, is that we're not talking of organizing. Don't mourn, organize. And we're not, I mean, there's another big protest day coming. It's July 17th. Topanga is well organized. Alan, you're coming to speak. We have musicians. We have a lot of people signing up. Everybody can sign up. There's a website called Mobilize. And you can put an event, you can host an event anytime you want. If somebody's taking down a statue or putting up a statue in your neighborhood, you can host an event on Mobilize. And hopefully people will look maybe and come and sign up for your event. People are checking that website all the time looking for things to do.
Yeah, and anybody who puts anything up on Mobilize should contact us because we're up on Mobilize and we will support all 259 people.
So you can send something out to the people in the neighborhood. We need to get out in the streets peacefully and make our voices heard. The other thing we need to do is try to stop bad legislation. And my great activist friend Jennifer Tanner just called me about the crypto bill. The crypto bill could cripple our economy because it makes us responsible. If crypto goes under, the United States of America is underwriting all the crypto in the world. So how much money are we going to, Stephanie Kelton will be going crazy how much money we're going to have to print to underwrite that obligation. So we need to stop it. So she's got amendments that we can put in the bill. It can't be done in the Senate anymore because the Senate's already passed it, but the House can pass it. So I'll be sending it to Ted Lieu. Laura Friedman's involved. I forget who else. And we need Alan. I'll send you what she sends me, and you can get it out to everybody.
It's a hideous bill. Dorothy is correct. The danger inherent in it and the short-term profiteering by Trump and his allies is what is going to have him go to bat for it in a big way. So it's a very, very dangerous bill, and it's a doubly dangerous bill because it, in its worst form, could be pressured through by Trump and the pressure he exerts on the Republicans. Thank you, Dorothy. So we're at the top of the hour. We're past it. And we have 6 more people on stack. We're closing the stack, everybody. So it's just Tyler, Sam, Chuck, a phone number who gets to be at the end of the stack. Sorry, phone number person. No, maybe Michael and then Amy. I have been trying to go man, woman, man through guessing by the names. And there are many more hands. So Amy, you will be soon. Harvey and Donna, though, do you want to close out yourself and we'll go to family time, or we've kept you for so long?
Yeah, I need to jump, but first of all, I want to really applaud so many of the comments that Dorothy made. And Dorothy, thank you for bringing up the protests, the Good Trouble protests that are coming up on the 17th. Make sure to use the links and create an event. Susan Gilbert, our wonderful state coordinator here in Colorado, she and I did an event for No Kings that was a virtual event for disabled and differently abled people. And we'll probably do something similar again, Susan. I know you're here. I know you love to hear that, but we had a very powerful event virtually. So I suspect we'll do something again. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alan, for letting me speak my mind today and always push PDA a little bit more on the edges. And thank you, Professor Kaye, very much. As you know, I always like to argue with my professors. It's a good thing. That's how we get more information out there. And thank you to everybody here. I'll see you next week.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Final thoughts, Professor Kaye.
Yeah, we didn't get to address it, and that's good for another day, perhaps. I want to remind everyone, or inform everyone, that late in the Trump administration, they put together a commission, which issued the 1776 report, which is one of the first things that Biden chucked aside when he took office. But this is a report which emphasized a new, this is in quotes, a new, more pro-American teaching of history. Okay. And I can assure you, I can bet, not assure you, I'm willing to bet that this will become the basis for what they end up wanting to do for 1776 and the 250th anniversary. And my biggest fear is not that they're going to try to do that. but that they will do their damnedest, as Reagan did beautifully, and to my mind in a disgusting way, but beautifully in a political fashion, appropriate our folks in such a way as to build them into their narrative. They'll take the likes of Frederick Douglass, because I saw them do it in this document. They'll take the likes of Elizabeth Cady Stanton. They'll take the likes of our radical tradition, and they'll build them in such a way as to be sure that the progressive and radical story of America is neutered. I got to go. Thank you very, very much. I love PDA.
Thank you so much, Harvey. And that is a beautiful clip to end on for our recording, everybody. So I'm going to close out the recording, but then Tyler is first on deck as we go to family time. So I just want to put, as Mike Fox says, a bow on things and say that we'll be back with next week's town hall. Next Sunday will be July 13th, 2025. Another town hall, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Happens every Sunday. Tell all your family, friends, co-workers, allies, and those people you have any kind of political conversation with. We welcome them here on our PDA town halls, and we will see you next week. I want to thank, of course, Mayor Regina Romero, Professor Harvey J.
So I just I'm on the town hall, the PDA.
Dorothy, you need to mute. We need to mute Dorothy and Donna Smith. So I want to thank Professor Harvey J. Kaye, Hartzell Gray, Donna Smith, and Mayor Regina Romero. And stay with us for family time.